welcome to another episode of Cadence Fishing TV. What an absolutely glorious day. I'm fishing today on the Gloucester Canal with my great friend Mike Shellard, and we've selected to fish at the bottom end of the canal towards Sharpness at a section called Purton, and we'll talk all about that in a bit when we're talking to Mike. But the aim of today is to target some bream, hopefully. The Gloucester Canal really can be a very prolific venue, and it's one that I really love to fish. I've fished it quite a bit over the years, mainly in matches, but I'm really excited to have a day pleasure fishing today with Mike. So I'm going to start off, just introduce a bit of ground bait and we'll get fishing, Mike. I'm just going to wait for this boat to come past before I start feeding, but I'm going to start off with a decent size cage feeder. I don't know if Chappie can pick that up, and I'm just going to put 4 or 5 nice feederfuls of ground bait with a few casters out. It's actually the end of April, so it's not really warmed up yet. It's actually quite a cold northeasterly wind which is blowing down the canal, but I know there was a spring lead yesterday that fished very well in areas for bream, so we're quite confident we're going to catch some bream. But I'm not going to go mad and put a load of bait in to start with, just in case it is fishing a bit harder. Just heaven, look. We're in heaven, Mike. So before I started, I put a bomb on just to sort of choose the area that I was going to fish and check there wasn't any snags. So I'm quite confident that that's the area that should come good for some bream. So I'll just let that hit the bottom and disperse that. I really love this section down here. I fished a practice match for a Division 1 national down here and drew round the corner, pretty much the end of the stretch really. Had a really nice day catching some nice bream, and it sort of struck me how beautiful it was. It's quite a unique location really, with us being right next to the Severn estuary. This is quite a wide section of the canal as well, and I'll let Mike talk about that because he knows the canal much better than me. But it's a good area. It's traditionally a good area for bream, and hopefully just by feeding like this I'll get a nice bed of ground bait and casters down to attract the bream and hold them in the area that I want to fish. You'll notice that the ground bait's coming out my cage feeder really easily, and I'm pretty confident that that's baiting up in a nice, tight, accurate area. I think I'll just do one more and then I'll change over to a smaller feeder and start to sort of build the peg up. So there we go. I'll start fishing now, and I think we'll ask Mike. Obviously Mike's fishing the pole, so he's trying different tactics, and we'll let Mike describe what he's going to do.
Well, today I'm going to fish the pole because James thought he'd be fishing the feeder. Although this is a feeder venue, I'm going to see what I can catch on the pole. I'm going to put a few bits of ground bait in and start off fishing pinky. 8 sections of my Cadence pole. We'll see how it goes. It's quite deep here. You're about 14 feet of water using a 2 gram float is what seems to be the trigger of the day, but we're really having problems with a little bit of a downstream wind, so might have to go on the feeder later. Fishing a fairly long line from the float because the water is fairly clear. See what we can catch.
So Mike, you live local to the canal and you've fished it for some time. How long have you been fishing it?
Well, I've started fishing it properly when I was about 12, but fished it previous to that. So that's well over 50 years.
So you've got a bit of experience on here then?
Yeah, I know this end of it more so than the Gloucester end of it, because I only live about 6 miles away, so that's my local venue. But it's a super venue. A lot of people call it a Marmite venue because you either like it or you don't. But
yeah, I mean, it can be a challenging venue, can't it? And
oh my word, yeah.
And throughout the year, you know, it's different moods and how different fish will feed. But this sort of time, mid-spring, it's when you start to get the fish feeding a bit better after the winter, don't you? When the water temperature starts to increase. And this section here at Purton's quite famous for its bream, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. This is a section called the Log Ponds. So this is pretty famous down through here.
Well, it's really fascinating. I mentioned that I fished that open here a few years ago. And this area and the area up where the entrance to the log yards was the best area.
Yes, it would be.
And I think am I right in saying that the bream tend to almost migrate to this area to go and spawn in that area? Because
supposed to, yeah. That's what's supposed to happen.
I guess it's shallower and there's lots of reeds that will really be.
I think it's a protection of the reeds and the stick-ups that they use, because in about another month, all that will be pads right the way through.
Yeah. Well, I just had a liner on that last cast, so I think there's a bream out there.
Oh, I'm sure there are.
But that is quite a stiff downstream wind, like you mentioned, and I'm just trying to get my braid to sink so I can.
It's making it quite hard for presentation for me.
But we've got the Bristol Channel right behind us here, and we're only a mile from the docks, aren't we?
Yes. Yeah. And probably only about 4 miles from the old Severn Bridge where you go over to Wales. So
wow,
it's open.
It's quite
well open
spectacular.
territory.
I mean, just behind the hedge here, you can see the whole estuary, and I think that's why you'd sort of mentioned to me it's almost got its own microclimate here, hasn't it?
It certainly has. You can be here within 10 seconds. You could be in a hurricane.
So you started on the pole. You mentioned this is more of a feeder section here. I think, is that because the canal's a bit wider here? And
no, I think it's because the fish are over the other side making their way to spawn, because they're obviously that time of the year, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think it's interesting when you're fishing big canals like this. You know, why I'm sort of chucking, I don't know, 11 metres from the far bank and you're fishing 11 metres out. Why don't we fish down the middle of the canal?
Well, I would be fishing 12, 13, but
with the wind?
The wind would kill my arms, I'm afraid.
But just to explain a bit about the depths. I mean, is it even depth, or does it have a pronounced shelf? Or
to be quite honest with you, I've seen the canal empty because we had a leak and we lost quite a bit. And they actually dammed this part off up between the bridges at the top. It was dammed and drained, and it's like a teacup.
Yeah.
It's actually like that. There is areas where there is a shelf, but if there's a shelf, it's full of weed now.
Yeah. And I think definitely in matches, with the disturbance of everybody fishing and setting up, it's quite often the fish do go over the far bank. Well, that's a decent fish, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that's a small roach.
No.
Well, I'll shut up for a bit and just let you concentrate on getting that out.
Because I'm still only using an 08 bottom, so I'm going to have to be a bit careful.
Well, take your time, but that's a good sign. I've had another line bite as well on the feeder, so looks like we might be on some fish anyway. No.
That is, there you go.
What's it, pulled out? Or?
Yeah, I pulled out. Either that or I fouled him. This time of year you do get a lot of fouls. And could well have been because the bait ain't touched. We'll see. That's not the first time nor going to be the last, I wouldn't have thought.
Well, it's a good job. Yeah, say if we were having a competition, you might have have sworn a bit more then, but
yeah, I would have cussed, and I'm not allowed to cuss today because people know me. I do cuss quite a bit.
So species-wise, obviously we're targeting the bream. There's smaller bream, there's skimmers.
This time of the year, there's a lot of hybrids.
Yeah.
Good ones.
And you mentioned about some tench as well. Some of the local anglers have been catching a few tench. So
yes, they turn up now. They turned up about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
It was quite...
It's kind of interesting, isn't it, how the canal, over the years, the species have changed. Bream really are dominating the matches now, aren't they? Because
absolutely, this time of year. The roach completely disappear within the next month.
Yeah.
But in my younger days, the colour of the water would have been more than chocolate. It was really, really filthy because they had the big tankers going up and down to the petrol and oil and timber.
Yeah.
So this big ships used to continuously go up here.
Yeah.
And the water was very dirty.
Yeah. Well, I just had another line bite there, but I'm just being patient and waiting for a positive bite.
They're all over here now, those little fish.
So you don't get such big boats up the canal anymore now, no?
Only the tall ships. And there's a
liner.
A floating hotel goes up and down occasionally, but lots and lots of pleasure craft, small.
Yeah. Well, there's a big tall ship up there that I'd love it if that came down today. That would be spectacular.
Good chance it will.
Well,
but make sure you bring your feeder in because they've got a keel.
Right. We'll lose the lot.
You'll lose the lot.
Well, I just had another really good line bite there, so I'm actually going to drop my feeder a bit closer, not quite as far. I think that the bream might be this side of where I'm actually fishing.
But the fish are hungry.
So talk about your feeding then, Mike. You're not loose feeding, are you? You're just feeding.
I am putting a little bit of castor in.
Yeah.
Just a little bit of castor. But I'm just using a simple ground bait.
Yeah. And it looks like it's quite a nice, sort of almost cloudy ground bait as well. It's not.
Yeah, it doesn't go. I don't like it going down hard on the bottom because the bottom of this canal is very silty. If you put it in too hard, it just goes into the silt. So
yeah,
I like it to stay on the top, but that's a personal preference.
And I notice you're not cupping in either. You're actually throwing it.
I'm old school, I'm afraid. But there you go. I would if I was on a match, but I do use it.
Liners.
Bad habits, I suppose.
No, I think it's good. We've all got our own ways of fishing, and I think sometimes you can be too accurate, can't you?
Yeah, I'm fairly accurate when we're throwing anyway,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
There is occasions when it goes wrong. Looks like we've got some hybrids, little ones in here. Oh, pommies.
So do you reckon that's an actual silver bream, or do you think it's a hybrid?
We've had a lot of debate over it. We call them pommies, and I think they are pommies.
Yeah, I think that's an actual silver bream.
Yeah.
We get them on the Warwickshire Avon early in the season, and they're quite curious fish, really.
They don't weigh anything though, do they?
Yeah, you don't see, we don't really catch many silver bream, do we? But
there's millions of those, for want of a better name, pommies.
yeah.
But you can get them up to £1, on here.
Mm.
They're quite good fish.
They fight well, don't they?
Yeah, go look out.
I've actually come about another 2 metres closer in now, Mike, because there's definitely fish out there.
You've gone over the top of them.
The last thing I want to do is foul up one and pull out of it, so...
Like I did just now.
wasn't having a go at you.
No. It's quite easy. The problem is, I think the fish are actually up in the water before they get their heads down. It can be quite frustrating because you hook a £5 fish foul, you'll have a job to get them in on a pole.
That looks like a skimmer to me.
A 50-50, I think. Lovely.
And I've just got my first one as well.
Good man.
So that trick might have worked, just coming a bit closer in. Don't think it's a big bream, it might be a...
No, but it takes a while for them to come on that bit of feed.
Well, like you, I'm not fishing too heavy to start with, so...
No.
It's going to take my time, but...
No, if those big bream rock up, well, I shall have to change my hook length.
Yeah, it's another skimmer like yours.
Yeah, but that
Brilliant, well we're off the mark anyway.
to me is a good sign because that means there's lots of fish here.
Just...
I'm fishing a red maggot top with a pinky.
That was on double red maggot, that one.
Yeah.
Mike, that's a nice bream, isn't it?
Yeah. Best part of 4.
Looks like it's wrapped round, doesn't it, as you've been playing it?
Yeah, he's not. I got him in the mouth.
Well, Mike, just as you got that one, I'm into another bream.
Yep. That's what
I
we
think
come
you
here
put us
for.
on some fish here, mate. Bit of local knowledge.
Get away.
Well, this one I was getting a lot of indications, and I just really waited and waited, and then I've got a positive bite, and it feels like a good fish. I think I'm going to change onto a 16 hook. I'm just fishing an 18 at the moment, so I think I'm going to fish a bit more positively.
Yes.
You never know, it might be foul hooked, I think.
I expect he'd have come off by now.
No, he's not. It's a big one.
Yeah. Proper one. Oh, yes.
It's got Monty's attention, that has. Just trying to net him in the sun here. That is a nice bream.
The match winner.
You'd be laughing now in a match, wouldn't you?
Yeah, not half.
Whoa, that's a proper lump. I'll just hold him up quickly for Chappie before I unhook him. Look at that. That's a bream. It's got to be £5, that one.
And a nice neck too.
What's the story with these dead barges or something that I heard about in this area?
Well, they're just behind us here. That concrete barges that they reinforce the banking on to stop the bank washing away into the canal. But it's become quite a tourist attraction. Weekends, there's an awful lot of people just come down to see the dead barges and enjoy the scenery and the walk down here. And you're into another.
You can actually see the remnants of a barge over there. Is that anything to do with that, or is that just?
I believe they tried to reinstate one. They got it off the mud bank and got it to the canal, but I'm afraid they lost it here. It sank.
So that's actually pretty much opposite where I'm
not
fishing,
sure it's that one or where the boys are. But
yeah, there's another one up there as well.
Yeah, they put that.
But I wonder if that's, do you reckon that's some kind of holding feature for the fish?
Could well be. But saying that, in my younger days, these were the pegs to draw in the matches, so there was no boats there.
Oh, really?
So they are, oh my God.
You're into one as well. Well, it's brilliant to be both catching on two different methods, and
Well, I've got to be honest with you, I didn't think I would catch on the pole. I thought that the feeder would have been the job today, but that's the Gloucester Canal, you just don't know.
looks like another good bream that, Mike.
Yeah, I think this is quite a good fish actually.
Have you scaled up your hook length yet, or are you still?
No. Bit of a lazy angler, I'm afraid.
Well, I've actually changed over to a 16 hook, and I'm fishing with a shorter hook length and a more positive rig, and it's working much better. I'm able to really leave the line bites and wait for a positive bite, you know, when the fish has hooked itself. Nicely done, Mike.
She's a beauty.
We're kind of going neck and neck, aren't we?
Sort of.
I mean, obviously we're not
No
competing in any
competition
way,
today.
are we?
No. Although we're both match anglers, it's in us, I'm afraid. This is some fabulous bait.
Well, yeah. I'm lucky because I live near to Lane's Bait in Coventry.
Lane's bait at Coventry.
Yeah, so that's where I got that from. So the red maggots, the casters and pinkies are from Lane's, and they are beautiful, aren't they?
Absolutely incredible bait. No wonder you do so well. Fabulous bait.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't have given you any of that if we were fishing a match, to be honest.
I've got to be honest, I think that's the best casters I've ever seen.
That one's come off. I'm just letting Chappie focus on my tip and hopefully pick up some of the line bites and knocks that I'm getting. You see that one there? And now that's more of a positive bite. I'm still going to wait. It's really important when you're bream fishing that you don't strike at line bites. And hopefully the fish will find the bait and hook itself, and then I'll get a really positive bite. But I'm not worried if I don't get a bite. I'll just gently remove my feeder and cast back out again. There's obviously a good amount of bream out there, and the last thing I want to do is start foul hooking them and losing them and spooking the shoal. I'm actually using a stiffer tip on this rod. I've set two rods up. One's got 1.5 ounces carbon in. This is a 2 ounce carbon tip. And you can see I'm using braid, so braid's very direct. And there's this skim on the surface, so a softer tip would really bend round, probably too much. But with this stiffer 2 ounce tip, I can pretty much set the tip perfectly, and I can still register the line bites and hopefully distinguish between them and now that's more of a positive bite. Look, I reckon that's on, so I'm going to pick up, and there we are. We got it. So that showed exactly what I was on about. I had to probably wait 3 or 4 minutes of getting plucks and indications before I got a positive bite, and I think I've enhanced that by using the shorter hook length. And now I'll show you the rig when hopefully I've got this bream out, but it feels like another good fish. They're really fighting hard, these fish, and it's nice to get them away from the shoal nice and gently, and then obviously start to bring the bream within netting range. Here he comes. I'm having to net him into the sun, which isn't easy, but there we are, we got him. So we'll just have a look and see where that fish is hooked, and you can see he's hooked really nicely in the corner of the mouth. I'll just... Mike's got another bream as well. I'll just hold one up for you. You can see he's quite got the rough spawning barnacles on his head, look. So I'll get him back in the keep net, and I'll show you the rig. I like to put the fish in with my landing net rather than drop them from a height, because it's quite high off the water, especially the way I've set up today. So I like to just use my landing net to gently put them into the keep net. So let's show you the rig then. So this is the rig I switched over to when I realised there was a good amount of fish in my peg. Actually, I've just broken the hook off. I'll just have to tie another hook on quickly. So the hook I'm using now is a 16 Census B3 180. Now that's a big size 16 in my mind. That's really a size 14. But using a bigger hook like that can really help when you're catching good amounts of bigger bream. I'll just tie that straight on. I'm not worried about putting another length of line on, because I don't want a long hook length, I want a short hook length. The fish are feeding and they're coming in on the feeder, and I think a longer hook length in this situation would just create more foul hook fish. So there we go, I've got another hook on. There you can see that. It's a lovely hook, not too heavy, very, very sharp, very strong. And I've only got, what's that? I don't know, a foot and a bit of a hook length. I'll tie this rig for you later on, but basically I am fishing this in an old-fashioned loop. It's not a rig I use very often, especially if I'm river fishing, but in a situation like this on a lake or big canal, this is a very, very positive rig that's going to result in the fish hooking themselves on that short hook length. So I actually caught that fish on 3 live maggots. There's a bit of a tag on there, I should just trim that off really. So 3 large red maggots, I'm hooking them through the tail because I think that gives more of the point without it being masked by the maggots. So we got 3 maggots hooked through the tail, and I'm also going to put a fluoro pinky on as well. This is one of my favourite bream baits when I'm really catching bream well. when the fish are feeding. Works very, very well. Obviously on a harder day or in colder conditions I probably wouldn't be using a big hook like that, and I'd change my hook bait accordingly. The great thing with that as well is I might start feeding some worms and I can fish a worm hook bait as well, but this is working well at the moment, so no need to change. I'm casting, you can see now I am probably about 11 metres from the far bank. I started off a bit further over and I've come a little bit closer to trying to eliminate the line bites. I'm trying to sink the line as best I can, the braid, and then just gradually tighten up to the tip. You're always going to get the braid floating a little bit to start with. I don't worry about that. I just leave everything settle because I don't want to move the feeder if I can help it. Just let everything settle, and maybe every so often I'll just tighten up slightly like that, and what that's doing is it's just cutting the braid in under the surface and just helping me set the tip. And then I'm just going to sit back again and relax. It's such great fun bream fishing when it's like this. It's so exciting. You're just waiting for that positive bite, either a nice steady pull round or sort of a more jaggedy bite when the tip's dropping back like that last one. So what's clearly happened is the bream's hooked itself against the feeder and it's moving the feeder. Then you know it's time to pick up, and hopefully you've connected with the fish nice and cleanly. So I think I'll leave that in and just talk to you about the bait and ground bait I'm using. We'll just leave that, hopefully we'll get a nice positive bite in a bit. So the ground bait I'm using, it's a mixture of dynamite dark swim stim and a halibut pellet dynamite ground bait. I'll show you those later. But you can see I've really loaded that with plenty of particles. I've got micro pellets in there, plenty of casters. So really it's more particles than ground bait. And I really like this style of ground bait when you're fishing like this, when you're on a good amount of fish, because I can really pack loads of bait into my feeder. It's quite a sticky mix as well, so that's definitely worth bearing in mind on a canal like this when it's a bit deeper. Just might have had a bite there, I'll just tighten up to it. So yeah, it's a nice sticky mix, so I know that I'm going to get my ground bait and particles down to the bottom. And I'm using this type of feeder. It's a rocket type feeder. I'll just get the other one, which is exactly the one I'm using. I think these are a matrix design. You can see that they're a rocket type feeder. They're really great for casting. They really aid accuracy and distance. They're not massive feeders. I suppose if I was in a match now and I was really catching, I might start to put a bigger feeder on to try and increase the feed even more. But at the moment that's working well. You can see I've got some mesh around the feeder, which helps to keep the feed in the feeder until it hits the bottom. And that's dispersing well out of the feeder with this cage when it gets to the bottom, and doing a great job. So that was the other rig I was using. That's a standard paternoster rig. And you can see there I've actually got a longer hook length. I had shortened it down, but that's my sort of rig when you're not catching so many fish and it's perhaps harder, because you're going to get a better presentation of the bait with that type of rig. Gives you more options. But as soon as I started getting line bites, I switched over to the more positive rig. So that's the feeder and the paternoster rig. And yeah, bait wise, I've got some dead reds, which are obviously a brilliant bait for bream fishing. I killed those by just freezing them last night, so they're lovely fresh dead maggots. I've got live red maggots, I've got some fluoro pinkies, and I've also done some floating maggots as well. Haven't used them yet, but on another day, you know, a floating maggot on a longer tail on the paternoster can get you bites on a hard day. So that's it. Very simple really, but very, very effective. So the rod I'm using today is our CR10 11-foot #1 feeder. It's an absolutely brilliant rod for bream fishing, skimmer fishing, silver fishing on rivers and lakes, and even even on big canals like this. The length's perfect, it's enabling me to cast a distance, and it's also very, very nice. I'm just watching my other tip, I'm just getting some good line bites on that tip, and there we go. I don't know if that's a fish or another line bite, but yeah, it's a beautiful rod. It's got a great action, very progressive, so you can fish finer on hard days, and it's supplied with 3 tips, ounce, ounce and a half and 2 ounce. The reel I'm using is the CR10 size 40 size, and you might be able to pick up on the line clip there. You can see I've actually line clipped about 3 times, and that's where I've started off at one distance where I fed initially, and then I've come in a turn or two as I've started getting line bites. But obviously means I can then, if I'm not getting bites, I can unclip the last one and go back to further towards where I fed. But that's a really good tip for whenever you're bream fishing if you're starting to get lots of line bites. The braid I'm using is it's just diameter 010. I don't know what breaking strain that is. I suppose it's around about £4. And the one I'm using is my friends from Holland, Peter and Marianne van der Villick. It's called Hardcore, and I've used this braid for years, and I really like it. It really, really is very robust and sinks as well as a braid will sink. Looks like Mike's into another bream, and I think I'm going to cast out because he's putting me under a bit of pressure here while I've been talking, so I better recast. We're having a brilliant time, aren't we, Mike?
Fishing's very good.
It's kind of intriguing. It's there's obviously a lot of fish there, and we're both getting lots of line bites. We're catching, but it's kind of like, I don't know.
A little bit frustrating with the line bites, isn't it?
But it is amazing fishing. I probably must have 10 or 12 bream now, and I'm finding just by varying the hook baits a bit, I put a bit of chopped worm in and fish with worm hook bait. That worked well. I caught a few fish on that, and I've just gone back on the maggot and had a fish straight away. So every cast I'm getting indications.
I think I've got another one lined.
But Yep.
That feels like a fowler.
Definitely the best tactics for me are the old adage of sitting on your hands and just waiting for the positive bite. But it's beautiful, the sun's warming up. I'm going to try 4 maggots this time. A good trick that's worked for me today is every so often, say I'm getting loads of line bites but I'm not getting any positive bites, just fill the feeder with neat ground bait. Nothing at all apart from neat ground bait. It's uncanny, but the amount of times you suddenly get a fish, I think there's obviously fish that are feeding and they're getting quite sneaky and pinching the feed but not taking your hook bait. And then when you cut the feed out completely and just have neat ground bait, you're often rewarded with a fish. That's worked quite well for me today, so it's interesting. Even when the fishing's as good as this, you sort of want to keep experimenting with different hook baits and changing how you're actually feeding. Now the wind's just got up again. You can see there's a bit of a bow form there once my feeder has just hit the bottom, and I'm just tightening it up to it slightly. But I don't honestly think I've had a cast today where I haven't had indications on the tip. So Mike, I think you've got a similar amount of fish as me, and obviously you're fishing completely different tactics on the pole.
Yeah, I am.
Would you mind just perhaps showing us your rig and you're thinking about your tactics today on the pole?
Yeah, I can do. I want to look what I got.
So Mike, what depth are you fishing on the pole?
It's about 14 feet. Using a 2 gram float.
And I guess you're actually fishing on the slope still. You're not at the bottom of the ledge, are you?
No, I'm fishing slightly over depth and pulling it to the ledge.
So how much are you fishing over depth, would you say?
6 inches, if not sometimes more.
Okay. And you mentioned a 2 gram float. What type of float is it?
The one I made myself is just a balsa bodied hollow top 2 gram float on carbon stemmed.
And
a little bit longer than what you would normally buy in the shop.
And what's your thinking there?
A little bit more stable.
Yeah.
For me anyway. And I use float rubbers. I don't use eyes. I find them quite annoying that the line swazzles around the top of the eye. I think it's because it's so deep.
Yeah.
Get problems with that.
That's interesting. And why 2 gram? You know, well, I think some people that perhaps, you know, we're on a canal, they might think that's quite heavy.
Not in 14 to 18 feet of water.
Yeah.
I find that's sufficient. But it's quite windy as well. It gives me a little bit more control. But on a normal day and it's nice and stuff, I'd probably use 1 gram.
Yeah, sure. So the 2 grams just helping the rig get a bit more stability. And we're fishing for good fish, aren't we? So you want it to be quite positive anyway.
Yes, it is. I think I've had 1 rudd and a roach. That's about it. All the fish are over 3 pounds. So
yeah. And what about your diameter, main line, and hook length? What are you using?
I'm using a line that I found on the internet that's black.
Yeah.
And very difficult to see, but very, very strong and very, very, very tough.
Yeah.
So. Because I tend to use, because of a small affliction I have, I've got a couple of fingers missing. I find the stots better than shot.
Okay.
Just for my affliction, that's all that is.
Yeah, well, stots are really popular, aren't they?
But I get on with them really well. I can put them on and off very quickly. Where all my life I've used small shot, and I drop more shot than I actually put on the line. That's it.
So what's the actual diameter of the main line? Do you know?
Yeah. It's a 12.
So it's 012, so that would be about...
I was fishing 012 to 08, but now I'm fishing 012 to 10.
Yeah. So you're fishing something like a 2.5 pound main line to a sort of 2 pound hook length.
Yeah, a £1.5 hook length on the 08.
And what size and what type of hook are you using?
I'm using a Gamakatsu here, but it's quite a big hook because we're fishing for big fish, and I'm using 3 or 4 maggots.
Yeah.
Just a simple rig, a double bulk and 2 droppers.
Yeah.
A bit naughty, I put a dropper on the hook length, but I sometimes do, and that's just me.
Yeah, I think the whole aim about today is trying to identify the positive bites against the line bites, isn't it?
Yes, that's what I'm trying to do. That shot is also on the bottom, so you know if they picked it up, it comes up. But
Yeah.
it's not helped much today because of how choppy it is. But it's been all right.
Well, I think you've done brilliant considering how windy it is.
Yeah.
And you've had a great net of fish already. So just talk a bit about how you're feeding, how you're topping up.
Sometimes I put a ball in every chuck. When I say a ball, a piece about as big as a golf ball, perhaps smaller.
Yeah.
But I'm a great believer if you've got fish in your peg, they need something to keep them happy. So I'm loose feeding as well as putting in ground bait. But we're pleasure fishing, not match fishing. So perhaps I do overdo it a little bit, but I think we all do sometimes.
Well, I think the fact is we're pleasure fishing. We've got so much water to go at, haven't we? And you know, I don't think you could overfeed the peg on a day like this, personally.
Not the way things are. No. There's so many fish in front of us.
But
I've got a job to get the line. I've got a job to get the float to cock sometimes. But,
it's fascinating, isn't it? Well, anyway, we'll let you keep going, mate. I know you're loving it, so get yourself back in.
Thank you.
I mentioned I'd started feeding a bit of chopped worm, and I just thought I'd show you how I'm feeding that. So I'm chopping the worm up quite roughly. Don't want to chop it up too small. You'll notice that I don't keep my casters in water. I like to keep them in a bag like that so they don't get exposed to the air. But the advantage for me with that is they're not wet, so they're dry. And I think that's really key when you feeder fishing. So I'm mixing up the chopped worm into that. So that's added some moisture, if you like, onto the casters. If I had wet casters, I think there'd been perhaps too much water. Sometimes I'll strain the sort of blood and juice off so that I'm not clogging my feeder up too much by over wetting the ground bait. And then normally I'd have some red worms, which I love to fish on the hook, but today I haven't got any, so I'm using 2 halves of a dendrobina on that 16 hook, which I explained is really more like a 14. So I'll put one bit on like that, and I'm going to put another bit of tail on. So basically I've got 2 tails, and then I like to tip that off either with a caster or a maggot or a pinky, mainly really just to stop the worm masking the point. So hopefully that will keep that away, so you know I'm going to get a good hook penetration when I do get a bite. And I think I'm just going to scoop a bit of chopped worm and caster into my feeder, push it into the ground bait. You can see I'm keeping my ground bait in a little container. I've got 3 or 4 of those, so when I mix my ground bait, I actually mixed that last night, kept it in the fridge. And for me, keeping the ground bait in smaller quantities like that in the summer when it's dry, when it's very hot like this, just keeps it so fresh. So I'll keep that covered up whilst I'm waiting for a bite, and it keeps the smell, it keeps the consistency, and it doesn't dry out. So I think that's really important. So there we go, that's the rig. Casting wise, obviously I'm casting to a clip, and once the feeder hits the water I want to try and feather it into the water. I'm trying to be as accurate as I can, and then I'll just put the tip under the water to try and sink the braid as best I can. It's deep, it's probably about 14 foot deep where I'm casting. Looks like Mike's got another good fish on, Mike. Alright, well we'll let you get that in. that's basically what I'm doing. That really worked well though. I'd only been in for a couple of minutes and had a real positive bite, and this fish nailed that the 2 bits of worm. Braid singing in the wind. They're really fighting hard, these bream, today. You'll notice I quite like using this long landing net pole. Just means I can bring the fish in and hopefully net them a bit easier. He's not giving up, this fish. There we go. Look at that one, man. Just tucked him in the lip. You can still see the 2 bits of worm. Look at that. Absolutely beautiful. I was going to just talk a bit about the actual ground bait mix in a bit more detail. So I won't cast out, I'll put my rod down and just show you. So I mentioned I mixed it up last night. So the ground bait is a Dynamite Swim Stim Amino Black and this Marine Halibut Sweet Fish Meal. So it's a ground bait that's got, you know, it's a strong, attractive mix. It's I like the slightly dark colour because the canal's still really quite clear, so I think that helps. But it's definitely sort of moving towards a ground bait mix that I'd use, you know, once the temperature starts to get better. And I'll just show you the actual ground bait. So I talked about keeping it fresh in little batches like that, and you can just see how nice and fluffy that is. I'll always run it through a riddle, through a ground bait riddle, once I've mixed it. And sometimes during the day I might re-riddle it. I don't really need to bother with that today, but I'll pop that back in there. I love using brown crumb when I'm bream fishing as well. And if I was fishing in colder temperatures, maybe in the winter or sort of the back end of the autumn, I'll switch over to a groundbait like that with less feed quantity in it. So that one's an F1 sweet mix. And I know that's a really popular mix for a lot of anglers that fish the Gloucester Canal in the colder months. Yep. Well, I thought I'd just show you how I tie the rig I'm using today. First thing to talk about is the shot leader I'm using. So I mentioned the braid. So I've obviously got that braid, which is, I think it's around about 0.8mm, very, very fine. But it's perfect for, you know, really magnifying the bites and determining the difference between line bites and bites. And also when you want to cast, with it being so fine, you can cast long distances really easy. Anyway, the way I like to attach my shot leader is I just tie a simple loop in the braid, and then I just go onto that with a good old-fashioned half blood knot. So very, very simple. For me, it's great because I can change my shot leader very, very quickly with this knot. It can be a bit tricky tying knots with braid. And this might not be the strongest knot, but it's strong enough when you bear in mind the hook lengths that I'm using. Very, very quick. I'm using some new line that I'm testing, which has got a diameter of 0.20. So I like to use a shot leader that is 2 lengths of my rod. So I'll just wind on there a couple of times. And the whole idea of this shot leader is, it's not really anything to do with shot leader in terms of the force on the cast. It's more to do with just giving a little bit of cushion with the braid that's very direct, especially when you're bringing the fish up to the net. So by just having that sort of 20 foot of mono just gives it that bit of stretch, which just helps when you're playing the fish, but without detracting from the sensitivity of the braid. And I showed you the rig I'm using, which is very, very simple. It's the old-fashioned type of, I'll just cut that bit of line off there, the old-fashioned type of loop where you're fishing the feeder inside a loop. Now, I don't like this rig if I'm fishing for big fish like chub and barbel or carp, or if I'm fishing on a river where it's snaggy, because I find if you snag up, you're going to lose the fish. Basically the hook length's going to crack off. But when I'm fishing in a situation like this, it's not snaggy, I can fish this with some confidence. So basically I form a loop there that's around about a foot, and I do an overhand knot where I create the loop knot. I'll leave the feeder on in this case. So basically I've now got a loop. The feeder's inside that loop. You'll notice that I'm using a snap swivel so I can change the feeder very easily. And then I only want, to enhance the bolt effect, I only want probably 2 or 3 inches of loop where the feeder can run. So I'm going to form my loop knot just 2 or 3 inches. Okay, so there we go. And then now I'm going to tie another knot so that sits proud of the feeder. So you can see there, that's almost like a boom now. And I've got the bolt effect of that feeder running inside that loop. So that's what's really worked well today. Hook length, I'm using 012 Vesp, which should have a breaking strain of around about 3-pound line. And I'm only using a short hook length, I talked about that. So I'm just going to tie a loop in my hook length. Pass that over the mainline loop, back through, and there we go. So now I'm going to set my tail around about that. So what's that? About 2 foot. And just tie my hook straight onto that. This is the way I like to, for most of my fishing, I don't tend to use hook lengths that I've tied. The exception being perhaps bloodworm or when I'm bleak fishing, obviously to save time. I like to tie my hooks like this on the bank so I can get them exactly right for the rig and the conditions that I'm faced with. So there we go. That's that rig. Well, Mike, we were just talking about finishing the session, weren't we? And you've hooked into a good fish. So
I have, I'm afraid.
Thought I'd come and have a look. We've had a great time, haven't we?
We've had a fabulous day. Except for that bit of wind, it would have been absolutely top.
Well, it's kind of about 2 o'clock in the afternoon now, and the wind's dropped a bit and the sun's beautiful.
And the fishing's been fantastic.
I don't want to talk too much. Let's. I'm kind of hoping it might be a tench, because you talked about the tench here.
There's not that many of them, but no, I think it's a bream, but because of the swirl it's leaving. I haven't had one of these all day.
No.
You're doing his job, do you?
Yeah.
Of course, there is carp in here as well, obviously. My word. I don't want to give him too much stick.
You've had a good run of fish, haven't you, Mike? You've had sort of 5 or 6 fish in as many puts.
Yes, it was going bonkers for the last 10 minutes.
Yeah.
He's certainly making headways on me now.
That's not a bream, is it?
No, I don't think so. Not unless I got him in the tail.
I don't want to put any pressure on, but that big tall ship's coming.
You said he would, didn't you?
Yeah. He's picked his moment, hasn't he?
Oh dear, dear, dear.
I think you'll be all right. I think you're winning the battle.
If I get him in here and get him this side, I should be all right.
Yeah, you get him in before he comes, I reckon. Do you want me to net him for you if he comes up?
I don't know, let's have a look, see what we got here.
I'll go and get my landing net.
I'm giving in as much as I can.
Do you trust me?
God, you know what it is, don't you?
Is it
one of them
big bream?
Great big ones.
It is a big fish, that's for sure. But I'll try not to fall in.
No, we couldn't stand that laughing today.
Mont, it's a ship.
You don't like it though, do I? I'm gonna put another one in, mate.
Well done, mate. I think you're winning the battle. These fish have got serious attitude, haven't they? The way they've been fighting.
It's yours this time, James.
Yay, we got it, mate. Well done. Let's just let this big ship go past. That's an impressive sight, isn't it? We talked about that, didn't we, earlier?
He's going to charge us for filming.
What's it called? Is it Lady? Gladys. Gladys, yeah. What a beautiful boat that is. And I guess those would have worked the canal at one point, wouldn't they? That kind of thing?
No, I'd never seen them go up here.
No?
But no, that's all for show. They go up to Gloucester docks for the tour ships.
Yeah, from Harwich. Amazing. I'll tell you what, Mike, that's a nice way to end the session, isn't it? Should we have a look at it?
Brilliant. What do you reckon he is?
Oh, it's a beautiful big bream, that's what it is. Look at that.
What one of these?
There you go. I'll let you hold it up for Chappie.
Good Lord.
I'll just give him a quick breather down here. Well done, Mike. What a fantastic way to end the session. Don't want to keep the fish out for too long, but
what a beautiful fish.
That's going to be 5 to 6 pounds, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well done landing that on the pole, mate. I'll put him back, all right?
Yeah, brilliant.
So, I've got to say, what an amazing day. We thought it was going to be good, but I didn't think it was going to be that good.
It's been brilliant.
And we sort of made the decision that, you know, we could have carried on fishing and perhaps caught another 10 or 20 bream.
We've had a good day anyway.
We've had a good day anyway, and we didn't want to overdo it with the nets. And I just think, wow, what a tremendous venue. I've always wanted to come back and fish this section at Purton, so thanks for organising it.
You're welcome.
And I think it's great. We've sort of become good friends, all from meeting up and you buying a pole.
You helped me out magnificently to get me a pole. You actually took the effort to drive out and see me, so that in a lockdown condition it was nice.
Yeah,
very
and
nice.
We've got an open evening today in Cheltenham, so that's another reason for packing up a bit earlier. But we like to organise these events around the country where we can. Obviously, selling online is a negative for people being able to see the product. Obviously, the quality and the performance for the money is absolutely fantastic, but I like doing these events. So we've got a good one in Cheltenham, and tomorrow I'm up in Wrexham, so we do try and cover different parts of the country.
Yes, I know. You're all over the place.
Well, thanks again, Mike. We'll put the details for the fishing at the end of the video. Basically, it's controlled by one company, isn't it? The whole lot.
Yeah.
You got day tickets available, and you can also buy a season ticket.
That's right.
Thanks again, mate.
Cheers. Been a really good day. Really good day.
Well, thank you, Mike, and thanks everybody for watching.
Thanks very much.
Well, Mike, we're going to put your fish back. You've got a bit of a gammy leg, haven't you? So
Yeah. Have a job
I'm going to
get
put them back,
now.
and we didn't want to get them out and take shots of them on the bank or anything. We just didn't want to bother with so many fish. You've got a good 50 pound there. Absolutely amazing net of fish
Cracking
on the
day
pole.
on the pole.
So we'll try and put them back. And can you see that, chappie? Can you see? Yeah? So I'll put mine back. It's great to see them all going back so well, look. All absolutely in fighting condition. Nice one.